back, everyone. Today, we're diving right into the dramatic grand finale of the book of Jeremiah, specifically chapters 51 and 52. We're looking at a literal tale of two ancient, monumental cities, and we're going to see the violent clash of warfare, divine judgment, and ultimately the hope that ties them both together. Let's get right into it.
Our source material today comes straight from TN Inside, which kicks things off by inviting us to read directly from the scripture passage itself. These chapters really act as the ultimate climax to decades of prophetic warnings finally crashing headfirst into stark historical reality.
All right, here's our roadmap for this explainer. We'll be hitting the fall of Babylon, the symbol of the river, the siege of Jerusalem, Zedekiah's tragic fate, the Babylonian exile, and we'll wrap it up with restoration and hope.
Okay, starting right off with Section 1, the fall of Babylon.
You know, in the ancient world, Babylon was the undisputed superpower, right? No one messed with them. But chapter 51 completely flips the script. While God used Babylon to discipline Israel and Judah, Babylon's own sheer arrogance, well, that's earned it total destruction. The text sets up a triad of events that weave divine judgment right into the brutal reality of ancient warfare. We're talking about the prophesied fall of Babylon itself, the betrayal and capture of King Zedekiah, and the utter physical destruction of the Jerusalem temple, which sparks the exile.
And there is a seriously tragic irony here. Historically, Babylon was famous for these massive, supposedly impregnable double walls. I mean, they were so wide you could literally hold chariot races on top of them. Wild, right? Yet, the text prophesies they're just going to crumble and burn. And parallel to this, Jerusalem faces the exact same fate. Its walls are physically broken through, but only after a totally debilitating, desperate famine. Both cities, same devastating end.
Now, the text describes Babylon as a hammer in the hand of God, which is a fascinating concept when you think about it. Babylon was this blunt weapon used to smash other nations, including Judah, but at the end of the day, a hammer is just a tool. The text really emphasizes that Babylon is going to be destroyed for its own destructive pride, for shedding blood in Zion, and for worshiping lifeless idols, like their god Bel.
Moving on to Section 2, the symbol of the river.
So Jeremiah doesn't just use words to get his point across. He uses highly specific physical actions. He gives this officer named Sariah an exact step-by-step symbolic mission. Sariah is told to travel to Babylon, read the prophecy of its destruction out loud, pray, and then, get this, physically tie a heavy stone to the scroll and hurl the whole thing straight into the Euphrates River. That physical weight, dragging a scroll down to the riverbed, that represents Babylon sinking, never ever to rise again.
And here is where that cool metaphor meets literal history. In October of 539 BC, King Cyrus of Persia actually diverted the flow of that very same Euphrates River. This allowed his army to basically march straight under those impregnable walls right through the dried-up riverbed. So the exact river where Jeremiah's scroll was sunk literally became the avenue for Babylon's defeat. You can't make this stuff up.
All right, shifting gears to Section 3, the siege of Jerusalem.
The source provides this incredibly precise, really grim countdown of King Zedekiah's rebellion. It kicks off in his 9th year when Nebuchadnezzar builds a siege wall around Jerusalem. Fast forward 2 agonizing years to the 11th year, and the famine inside the city is absolute. There is zero food left. The walls are finally breached, and the systematic destruction is finalized by just burning the temple and the royal palace completely to the ground.
Which brings us to Section 4, Zedekiah's tragic fate.
As the city falls, the narrative zooms in on the horrific personal consequences for King Zedekiah. After trying to flee through a gate under the cover of night, he gets chased down and captured in the plains of Jericho. And his punishment? It is a masterful, brutal stroke of psychological and physical torment. His sons are executed right in front of him. And immediately after that, his eyes are gouged out. The very last thing he ever saw was the death of his own heirs. Then, he's dragged off to Babylon to die in chains. Just devastating.
Meanwhile, Nebuzaradan, the commander of Babylon's guard, comes in and systematically dismantles Jerusalem's wealth and infrastructure. I mean, the destruction is total. They burn the houses, the palace, the temple. They specifically target the legacy of King Solomon, actually breaking up those massive bronze pillars and hauling all that wealth back to Babylon. They exile the skilled workers and leaders, intentionally leaving only the absolute poorest people behind to work the fields and the vineyards.
Let's look at Section 5, the Babylonian exile.
The author of the text meticulously documents the exact phases of the exile, showing us exactly how the population of Judah was systematically depleted over time. This wasn't just a one-and-done event. In the 7th year, 3,023 people were taken. In the 18th year, 832 more. And finally, in the 23rd year, another 745 people were exiled. It was this calculated, multi-generational brain drain.
So we get this precise total of 4,600 exiles, which really grounds this ancient theological text in stark demographic reality. Now, 4,600 might seem kind of small to us today, but remember, these were the elite. We're talking the skilled artisans, the leaders, the healthy core of a small ancient kingdom. Yanking them out effectively ended Judah as a functioning independent state.
Finally, Section 6, Restoration and Hope. Despite the intense tragedy and brutal exile we just covered, the final chapter ends with a pretty surprising historical footnote. In the 37th year of his exile, a new Babylonian king suddenly releases King Jehoiachin of Judah from prison. He actually treats him kindly and even elevates his seat above the other captive kings. This is a massive signal that God's people were not totally abandoned. The royal line of David, it definitely still had a pulse. And this moment of favor points directly to the fulfillment of God's promise to Jeremiah that after exactly 70 years of captivity, there would be a profound restoration. The book of Jeremiah is filled to the brim with tears and suffering, but it's ultimately anchored by this specific time frame. Those who yielded to Babylon's yoke and trusted the prophetic timeline actually survived. The 70 years represent a period of severe discipline for sure, but definitively not the end of the story.
As we wrap up this explainer on such a massive text, we've seen empires fall, impenetrable walls crumble, and a whole nation exiled. Yet the text insists on a sovereign timeline that guarantees restoration. So think about this. How does knowing that even the most difficult, devastating seasons have boundaries, like Jeremiah's 70 years, change the way you persevere through your own struggles today? Thank you so much for exploring this with us. Keep asking those great questions, and I'll catch you next time.